The story of the Old Wild West begins after the conclusion of the American Civil War in 1865. Many families were left devastated and broken. President Ulysses S. Grant orders the building of railroads to the western frontier, as a way to get families back to building better lives. But before that, the California gold rush of 1849 has already brought many people to the West. And some will settle in the most beautiful mountain range in the American West. The Sierra Nevada mountains are some of the most treasured and visited land in the West. In modern days, people from all over the world come to see the wonderful vistas and walk the challenging trails. Many who drive on this stretch of State Highway 4 are not aware that it was once the main street for an old settlement built in 1858 by Norwegian miners. They called it Königsberg. It was later named Silver Mountain City. Today, the only structure that remains is the jailhouse. The limestone rock structure has outlived the many wooden buildings that once stood in this area. If you look carefully, you can see some large depressions on the ground near Highway 4. We believe those have been the basements to the old buildings. In other areas you can still make out the grading on the foundations of the buildings. Throughout the years, many have used metal detectors to find the leftover remains of the town. The creek nearby was a perfect source of water for the people of that time. And the harsh winters brought many challenges that the Norwegians were already accustomed to. In 1886, the town was abandoned once the silver mines were no longer producing adequately. About 40 miles from Silver Mountain City, on the eastern slope of the Sierra Nevada mountains, is an old mining settlement called Dogtown. Today, there is very little remaining of this settlement. But in 1857, it was the site of the very first gold strike in the eastern slope region. Some prospectors were hearing rumors of gold in the rivers near Mono Lake. A large gold nugget was found at this site and the miners set up camp. The camp was very rudimentary, and the conditions were miserable. Some settlers joked about the conditions and named the camp Dogtown, referring to the huts in the camp being small enough for only dogs to live in. The camp was abandoned around 1860 when larger gold strikes at Bodie, Aurora, and Virginia City drove the miners away. Today, the few remnants of the camp are a couple of foundations made of river rock. About 8 miles up the hill from Dogtown are the remains of Bodie. This mining town was one of the many boom towns that sprung up after the Civil War, when many Americans were making the move west for a better life. By 1877, this town had a population of at least 10,000. Bodie was originally a mining camp that started up in 1857 after the discovery of gold in the high hills east of Dogtown. The high elevation made the camp one of the coldest throughout the year. According to temperature records, the town has at least 300 nights a year that fall below freezing. The camp's very own founder, W.S. Bodie, died in a blizzard while making a supply run in 1860. The camp would be named in his honor, as well as the subsequent boomtown. In 1876, the Standard Company would start their successful mining operations at Bodie. This drew prospectors from all over, especially the war-torn East, to join the operations and call Bodie their home. But, with most of the early settlers being men who witnessed war and death in years prior, the town was plagued with violence. It was reported in newspapers that shootouts, murders, barroom brawls, and stagecoach holdups were a daily occurrence. The town's main street boasted 65 saloons, the most of any boomtown of that era. It wasn't until 1882 that the first church would be built on site. By the mid-1880s, many of the early settlers moved on to other boom towns and mining operations. Families would come and take their place in the now declining town. While most of the violence was gone from the scene, the residents still faced very harsh winters. During the coldest days in winter, going outside would be deadly. As the snow melted in the spring, some bodies would be discovered around the town. In 1892, the Standard Company built a hydroelectric plant to power the 20 stamp mill. The town went through 2 more decades of success. But, by 1910, the town's population dropped to about 700. In 1914, the town, and most of its operation, was bought off by James S. Cain. His continued operation of the mines resulted in profits the following year. But the town would continue to decline. By 1917, the Bodie Railway was abandoned, and the tracks would be scrapped for metal. The entire mining operation in Bodie ended in 1942, as the war effort was forcing non-essential gold mines to shut down. After World War II, the mines would never restart. In 1943, the last residents left Bodie. The town was left abandoned until 1962, when it became a California State Historic Park. By then, only 170 of the nearly 2,000 buildings remained. Today, 110 buildings are still standing in Bodie. Every year, nearly 200,000 people from around the world visit this historic site. In 1868, the Donner Summit Tunnel in the Sierra Nevada mountains was one of 4 tunnels that were constructed to accommodate the Central Pacific Railroad passing through the region. The railroad was part of the transcontinental line that connected the east and west coasts. Located near Donner Lake, and the site of the ill-fated Donner Party, the tunnel was constructed using Chinese labor. It took 3 years to complete. The tunnel was in use from 1868 until the modern replacement tunnel was built in 1993. The railroad would be used to transport bullion from the mining towns in Nevada to vaults in San Francisco. Today, the tunnel remains abandoned and has become a favorite site to visit for urban explorers. Across the Nevada state line, near the town of Dayton, is a remnant of a true marvel of engineering that was built during the late 1800s. The story of the Sutro Tunnel is one of fascination and genius. Up the hill from the Sutro Tunnel towards the northwest is the mining town of Virginia City. And underneath the city is an elaborate and extensive web of mining tunnels that were part of the Comstock Lode. This mega mining operation generated hundreds of millions of dollars in gold and silver. While the operation was successful, the miners were dealing with a constant problem: water flooding the tunnels. The mine operators wanted to deepen the shafts to find more minerals. But the inadequate pumps were slowing progress, and the mining companies wanted a solution. They turned to a Prussian mining entrepreneur named Adolf Sutro. Sutro operated tobacco shops in San Francisco for a number of years. But the rising popularity of the Comstock Lode drew him to Virginia City. Instead of joining the mining operation, he wanted to build a tunnel that would drain the water from the existing mine shafts and charge the mining companies to connect to their tunnels. He would also charge them $10,000 a day for the use of his tunnel to drain water. It was an ambitious and very costly venture. Many of the mining companies were against the project, stating that it would allow unauthorized access to their tunnels. But many miners were pushing for improved safety and better conditions in the mines. The Yellow Jacket mine disaster in 1869 would spur support for the tunnel. Supporters claim the Sutro drain tunnels would have given the miners an escape route from the fire that killed them. So that year, the tunnel would get its funding and construction began on October 19th. The tunnel is nearly 4 miles long, from the base opening near Dayton to the mines underneath Virginia City. There was also a connecting tunnel to all of the participating mine shafts. The main tunnel reached the Savage Mine in 1878. The connecting tunnels were completed the following year. Along with draining the tunnels, The mining companies could also use the Sutro tunnel to transport the ore down to the Dayton opening and process it there. This would dramatically speed up production. Mules were initially used to pull the carts of ore. But a new technology emerged. Batteries and an electric-powered motor would replace the mules in later years. Some of the machinery that was used in this operation still remains on site. The remains of the Sutro mansion that was burnt down in 1941 are still present. To this day, the Sutro tunnel continues to drain water from the Comstock lode. The water still collects onto a man-made lake. The property that was once owned by Sutro was sold to Franklin Leonard Sr. in 1898 after Adolph's death in August of that year. The property is now owned by a nonprofit organization known as Friends of Sutro Tunnel.
My name is Chris Pattison. I'm in charge of the Sutro Tunnel, the Friends of Sutro Tunnel. We're a nonprofit organization that was formed to restore and protect this 28-acre site that has been donated to us. And we're working also on restoring the Sutro Tunnel itself. If you're interested in joining our organization or helping us out in our progress at the site, please go to our website, thesutrotunnel.org. There's a donation button on there. You can help us out. We also have merchandise for sale, hats, shirts, calendars, books, all sorts of stuff. And every penny that we earn goes directly towards our restoration efforts.
Remnants of the old Wild West are still present, and we will continue to explore these sites in future episodes. Thanks for watching TruRealm Explores.